Do you love beautiful waifus and dueling card games? Well, if that's the case, then I have the perfect game for you, because today on Joker Reviews, we're going to be reviewing Sakura Arms. Sakura Arms is a two-player dueling card game where you're controlling two goddesses and building a deck out of their cards. You're going to manipulate the board that sits between you and your opponent, moving your Sakura blossoms from one space to another in order to manipulate the distances, the amount of shadow, and the amount of flare that you have to be able to use your abilities. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to set up your game board. That's this right here. You're going to add in your Sakura tokens where indicated in the rulebook, and you are going to separate them out based on where they're supposed to start. So you have your Sakura tokens that go into your life, your aura, and then these that go into the distance meter. This is going to be what indicates the distance between you and your opponent when you're trying to use your abilities. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to choose your goddesses. So in this case, I chose Oboro and Himika, and we're going up against Yukihi, and Yurina. Yurina's the box art one. Each of those goddesses is then going to come with a deck because of the deck boxes and everything. So you're going to take the cards out of your deck. That deck is going to consist of 4 ultimate cards and 7 regular cards. And you're going to take them both out. That's going to give you a total of 14 normal attack cards or normal cards. And you're going to have 8 ultimate cards that you're going to choose to mix together however you want to build a deck that is going to consist of 7 normal cards and 3 ultimate cards. And you can mix whatever number of each goddess's cards that you want into that deck that you make. There's a couple of additional things that you may have to do. There are some additional components that need to go out for specific goddesses, like this one here and this one here. And then you need to set your vigor cards out. Vigor cards serve as both a guide to what you can do on your turn, as well as tracking how much vigor you have by turning it. So the one that's going to start is going to start with 0 vigor. So you can see the 0 here is pointing towards the opponent. That means you have 0 vigor. When you gain 1 vigor, you're going to turn it like that and then turn it to 2. So the opponent that is not starting, not going first, is going to start with 1 vigor. You're going to start with 3 cards from your deck. So you take those cards and you're going to look at your hand. So my hand consists of these cards right here. And what you're going to try and do here is you're going to decide which cards that you want to use. How do you pay for those cards, you might ask. So we're going to go over that right now. You're going to be able to play those cards during your turn. There are a few stages for your turn, or phases. The first phase is the start phase. On the start phase, you are going to do the following things. You're going to first gain 1 vigor. Your vigor cannot exceed 2, but what you're going to do when you gain vigor is you're going to turn your card here, and that's going to gain you that 1 vigor. So now you have 1 to spend. You're going to check enchantments. So if there are enchantment cards on the board, which are labeled, and you'll be able to see if they're enchantments. I don't have any currently in my hand, but you're going to be able to move the Sakura blossoms that are on your enchantment to the board. And that's going to be kind of a countdown timer until either the effect that is currently going stops or it triggers an additional effect. So what's going to happen is if you have that enchantment is going to move the Sakura to shadow, and then it will indicate on the card what you're going to be doing as that's happening, or whether it's an ongoing effect or if it's an effect that's going to trigger at the end. The next thing that you can do in your start phase is you can reshuffle your deck. So how you would do that is you can pay 1 life. That would be moving 1 Sakura blossom out of your Sakura soup area down here, and you take your discard pile, which currently we don't have because it's the first turn, and you shuffle it in with your draw pile. Why would you want to pay 1 life to reshuffle? Well, if we get to the step that's after the reshuffle option, you then have to draw 2 cards. For every card that you are not able to draw, whenever you're supposed to draw a card, you have to pay 1 life. So if you have no cards in your deck, and you have to reshuffle and you have to draw a card, you then are going to lose a life, and you're going to end up having to reshuffle your deck anyway. So you want to keep an eye on how many cards you have left to make sure that you don't hit that. After your start phase, you have the main phase. The main phase has 2 different choices for combinations of actions that you can do. One is standard actions, and the other is full-powered actions. So for standard actions, you are able to either play a readied ultimate card or a card in your hand without the full power tag. So let's take a look at that first. You can see with these cards here, these 2 are normal cards. They do not have the full power tag. So you're able to play these as part of a standard action. This one here, you can see, has the full power tag. It is right there. So having that full power tag prevents you from being able to play that in the standard action set. Why might you want to hold back on playing those full power cards if they're typically stronger? So the reason why you might want to is because you might have to perform some basic actions. If you want to be able to perform basic actions on your turn, you're not able to perform a full powered action. So if you're taking standard actions, the other thing you're able to do is those basic actions. So what do those consist of? The first one is advance. How you're going to advance is you're going to remove 1 Sakura Blossom from distance and move it over to your aura. You're allowed to do that by at any point when you're not below 2 or less, which is the master distance. If you're at the master distance, you have to use the breakaway action, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But that is what you would do if you wanted to advance. This is representing how close you are to your opponent. So right now you start at a distance of 10. Now, if you wanted to do the retreat action, you can move that from your aura to the distance. That would then move us back to 10 from the 9 that we were currently at. You have the ability to recover. If you wanted to recover, you would move 1 from your shadow to your aura. So say you had ended up losing an aura during an attack that's coming at you, and it was like that. If you recover, it's going to move down to your aura. So it's going to take it out of your shadow, put it back into your aura. You'll now be able to take a little bit more damage to your aura. Another thing that you're able to do as a basic action is you're able to focus. So focusing moves a Sakura token from your aura to your flare. The flare space is what's going to be used to pay for your ultimates. This cost up here is the flare cost. So we're just going to leave that there for right now. And the last option that we have is breakaway. So you're only able to do the breakaway if you are below the breakaway distance here. So it's below 2 on your side of the board. Breakaway is going to be moving something from your shadow. So say you had it like this, and these were gone. So say you had it like that, and you wanted to do the breakaway action, you would move it from your shadow to the distance. These I'm just going to put back on the board. This is all detailed very well in the rule book. So that is a standard action. If you wanted to do a full powered action, and that applies to either full power ultimates, like this one here, you can see it has the full power tag, or to normal attack ultimates like this one, you're only able to perform one of those, and you're not allowed to do any basic actions alongside it. So how do we pay for these basic actions and these cards being played? What we're going to do is we're either going to spend vigor. So if I wanted to say advance here, I could pay 1 vigor, and I could then do the advance action here, which would count as a basic action. If I didn't have any vigor, say I had 0 vigor, I could actually discard a card. So we can discard a card here. You discard it face down when you're paying for your actions, and then I would be able to advance again, say, if I wanted to. That's how you're going to pay for your abilities and your cards. So you're not going to necessarily always be able to play out your full hand because you are going to have to discard cards most likely unless you saved up some vigor and kind of plot it out that way. If you want to play a card, that also works the same way. Say I wanted to play this card right here. I would have to either discard a card to play it, or I would have to pay a vigor, but in this case, I do not have any vigor, so I would have to discard that card. I would then be able to play this card, and it would perform the effect here. Let's take a better look at these cards. So there are some key aspects of these cards that we want to take a look at. So we have this up in the corner here. This is the distance. So in this, it requires a distance of 2 in order for you to use it. There are other cards that require a specific range. So say this one here requires a range of 5 to 8 in order for you to use this ability. This one is 2 to 4. This one is 3 to 4. And this one, distance is irrelevant, so you can kind of see that dash there. They each have different effects. So this one you can see is a trap. This one's also a trap. This one has the keyword inevitable, which means it cannot have reaction cards played against it. This one, you can see it makes your opponent stunned, and it has a triggering effect afterwards. It also has specific card types on here. So you can see this is a utility card right here. This is an attack card. This is a utility full power card. An attack full power card. Let's see if we can grab some reaction cards so I can show you. Here is a reaction card. So this is not a utility or an attack. You would play this in response to your opponent playing another card, and it would do the triggering action on the bottom there. Another important bit of information here is on the bottom here, it tells you exactly what damage it does. So that first number, the 3 here, the 3 represents damage from aura, and the bottom number, the 2, represents damage from life. So you're able to choose as the opponent, unless the card states otherwise, whether you take the aura damage, so this case 3, it would take 3 tokens out of your aura here, or if you want to take the 2 in life damage, which you would take them out of here. Usually the life number is lower. Sometimes they're the same, but usually it's lower because you can't really get anything back into life, which is kind of the rough bit. So that's what your end goal is, to try and get rid of all of the life out of your opponent. How do ultimates work? So ultimates are here, and they have a flare cost. So in this one, you can see the 5 up there. That's the flare cost. When you pay that flare cost, you take the tokens out of your flare, you put them into your shadow, and that readies the card. Once your ultimate is ready, that flips it face down, and you are now able to play it as a readied ultimate. You have to ready the ultimate before you're able to play it. Another bit of knowledge on this game is that you want to take a look at your goddess board, because your goddess board will have specific actions and specific bits that only your goddess can perform. So in the case of Oboro here, before you reshuffle your deck, you may play 1 face down card with trap in your discard pile. So that gives you a free card that you can play. The Himika, if you've played 3 or more cards this turn, your cards gain their Inferno effects, and the 3rd card you play also gains this effect. So the Inferno effects will be noted on there. So I've reset the board, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go through a typical turn. So we're going to draw those 3 cards as our first turn notes. We are then going to go through our start phase. Start phase, we're going to raise our vigor by 1. We're going to check for enchantments. There are none on the board at the moment. We are then going to see if we want to reshuffle. We do not want to reshuffle because we haven't discarded any cards yet. And then we draw 2 cards. We are then going to take a look at our hand. So in our hand, we have a decent amount of cards in our hand. So let's see what we could do here. We have something that's a little long range, so we might be able to do that. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to pay our vigor. We're going to move in. So we're going to advance. And then we are going to discard this full power card here to advance again. We are now within 8, which allows us to use the Magnum Cannon. So what we are going to do is then discard this card because we're not really close to it, so we might as well discard this one now. We also will be able to trigger this when we reshuffle because it's a trap, so we're going to place it face down and be able to trigger it later. And we're going to play the Magnum here. So we're going to play Magnum, which is an attack. It has to be used within 5 to 8. We are at 8, and it does either 3 aura or 2 health. Or 2 life, sorry. So they're able to pay the aura or the life, so they get to choose. If they only had 2 here, so say this was like this, they'd have to take the life damage because they wouldn't be able to pay the cost of the aura damage. So they're going to choose to pay it out of their life here. So life goes to Flare. And after we use it, we have to pay 1 from life to our shadow. Sorry, it doesn't go to Flare, it goes to our shadow. And then that gets discarded face up. So if you pay cost, those go face down. If you're actually using a card, that goes face up. Now we are going to end our turn. We have 2 cards in hand, so we do not have to discard down to 2, because if we had 3 or more, then we'd have to discard down. So we're going to end our turn. And that is how a typical game is going to progress. You're going to take turns like that over and over again and manipulate the boards, manipulate your Sakura tokens, try and manage your aura, your life, and try and knock down the life of your opponent first. Now that you know the basic rules of the game, I'll meet you back up top and I'll give you my final thoughts. So I really like this game. It's a simple enough game to explain. It has components that make it more interactive than your typical dueling card game or a typical card game in general. You're going to be moving things around on the board, which is kind of nice to be able to kind of have that feeling of that tactical element where you're going to be, moving components, the Sakura, these things right here, the Sakura tokens around on the board, and kind of having to manage that. There's a lot more to manage in this than a typical card game like a Star Realms or something like that. I mean, that's a deck builder, but just a dueling card game in general, usually it's just cards and that's all you're managing. You're managing the cards in your hand, but this you're managing a board, and the board is being interacted with by the other opponent as well, so you're kind of having to manage what each of you can do to manipulate the distance and things like that. So there's things to kind of pay attention to, and there's a certain level of tactics and planning because you have to put yourself into a position where knowing the cards that are in your deck and knowing what distances you need to be at, what resources you need to have in order to be able to use the cards and set them up correctly is kind of important in this game. It's very important, and that's something that you don't typically have to manage, and I really like that extra added aspect to it. Some positives of the game besides that are I really like the artwork. Like, this is probably my favorite character, but I really like the artwork. The components are really nice. So like the boards here, this is the board, you put it together. We went over it in the other section, but I like that there is a legitimate board. And I like how it's set up, how they have all of these like little mini posters, which are kind of cool. I like them. And you have your goddess boards, things like that. I like the Vigor card. The Vigor card's a decent way of having a cheap component that kind of serves its purpose, and I like that. It is shelf, table, and budget friendly, so it doesn't take up a lot of space on your shelves. It doesn't take up very much space on the table unless you really want to throw all the accoutrement around it, but a small gaming table is fine. And it's only about $28 right now as of time of recording on Miniature Market, so that is definitely something that is within the price range of a game like this where there's a lot of playability. Either a negative or a positive, depending on how you want to look at it, is certain of goddesses mix better with each other. So it seems like you might have 2 pairs of goddesses that you want to use and they might not mesh very well. But I think that's kind of a plus because you have to figure out how to make those goddesses mesh. There might be, we haven't played it enough where I can say that I know all of the combinations and how to make them work best, but some of them do seem to play immediately better with each other. The game is a nice blend of a lot of mechanics that I like. It's great components. It is easy to clean up. It's easy to teach. Those are all things that are important. And I will say there's a couple of complaints that I have. The translation from Japanese to English isn't the best, and there's some grammatical errors, some typos, and it can make understanding the rules a little bit more complicated if you are not somebody who, like me, is used to playing a lot of games and kind of understands how the mechanics work. I don't think that's necessarily a big drawback, but it is something that is a little bit of a drawback. Another complaint that I have is the boxes here. I'll show you. So these boxes that come for the decks, I like that they include these, but they're not great quality and they bend really easily. So there's already like a bend in this one here, a crease, because it's really hard to make them into boxes without bending the boxes themselves. But that's really my only complaint when it comes to the components of the game. So definitely a game that I would recommend you giving it a shot. All of the great positives that I listed. It's a specifically 2-player game, and it's designed for 2 players, which is nice because there's not a ton of games that I feel like scale down to 2 players very well. And having a game that's designed for 2 players, when you only have that one other person to play with a lot of the time, and that's your primary game partner, having those games that you could bust out that are specifically designed for 2 players is really nice. It only takes about 20 minutes to play. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. Depending on your deck, it could take 20, 25 minutes, especially if you're just learning the game. But as you kind of boil it down, you can get it down to like between 15 and 25 minutes, which isn't bad for a game like this. And it has a lot of replayability, which is also a big positive. I'd probably give it about a 7 out of 10 if I were going to rate it and give it the number that everybody likes. 7 out of 10 would probably be where I would stand on it. And yeah, that's Sakura Arms. So I would love to hear if you've played this game down in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on any other kind of 2-player dueling games or games that blend board manipulation and card playing. If there's any other things that you'd recommend that you'd want us to check out, I would definitely love to hear about that. I would love for you to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, ring that notification bell so you know what's up, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.